I had given them everything. My love, my time, my soul. But when I needed them the most, my daughter looked at me and said, "You're just an extra mouth to feed." And just like that, everything I had sacrificed for years meant nothing. Before we dive deeper, hit that subscribe button and join us where betrayal, drama, and hidden truths unfold. Also, let us know where you're listening from in the comments. "You're just an extra mouth to feed," my daughter said, her voice laced with an emotion I had never expected from her. Her words cut through me like a blade, leaving me speechless, breathless. I had heard those words before, from others, from distant relatives, or even strangers, but never from her. My own daughter, the one I had carried for 9 months, the one I had raised, loved, and fought for at every step of her life. The one who should have been my comfort, my solace, the one I believed would be there for me in my twilight years. But instead, she saw me as nothing more than a burden. She said it so casually, as if I were nothing more than an inconvenience. She didn't even look at me when she spoke. Her eyes were focused on the dishes in front of her, her hands moving swiftly as if she had no time for the weight of her own words, the words that would change everything. I felt the sting in my chest as the silence enveloped us. I could hear the ticking of the clock in the background, louder than ever. The silence between us seemed to stretch for miles, and I didn't know how to fill it. I didn't know how to respond. My mind raced, but nothing could come out. Nothing seemed to matter. How could she think that? How could she treat me this way after everything I had done for her? The kitchen was dimly lit, and the smell of burnt toast still lingered in the air. I had been standing there watching her as she cleaned, doing what I thought would be an act of kindness. I had offered to help her with the house, to clean, to make it more comfortable. After all, she was busy, and I didn't want to be a burden. But what I didn't expect was her response. Her words weren't the only thing that stung. It was the way she said them, the indifference in her voice. She didn't even try to understand. She didn't even bother to listen when I tried to explain. "Mom," she continued, finally looking up at me, "I don't need you here. You're taking up space. You're taking up my time. If you want to stay, you'll have to earn your keep." It was as if the world had suddenly gone silent, the air thick with a tension I had never known existed between us. And then she said it, the words that crushed what was left of my spirit. "Clean the house for rent. I can't afford to keep you here without something in return. I'm already stretched thin." I blinked, my mind racing to make sense of what she had just said. Rent? I had never paid rent in my own daughter's home. I had raised her, loved her, and she was asking me to pay to stay there, to earn my keep. I felt a wave of disbelief wash over me, my heart sinking into the pit of my stomach. I tried to speak, to defend myself, to ask how this could be happening, but the words caught in my throat. All that came out was a faint whisper of pain. "Why?" was all I could manage. She sighed, clearly exasperated. "Because, Mom, it's not like it used to be. I have a family. I have bills, and I don't have time to take care of you. You need to understand that." I didn't know how to respond. How could she not understand the years of love I had poured into her, the sacrifices I had made, the things I had given up, and the years I had spent putting her needs before my own? How could she not see that I had always put her first, always protected her, and now, when I needed her, when I was vulnerable and old, she pushed me away? But instead of arguing, instead of pleading, I simply nodded, my eyes welling with unshed tears. I had no fight left in me, not against her, not against my own daughter. So I stood there, stunned and defeated, as she turned back to her work. I wanted to say something, but I couldn't. The betrayal was too deep, the pain too much. I felt a coldness settle in my chest as I realized that my daughter had become someone I barely recognized, someone I didn't know. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. I had spent my whole life living for others, for her, for my family. I had given everything, but it had never been enough. I was invisible, a shadow, and inconvenient. And that moment, standing there in her kitchen, I made a choice. I wasn't going to be invisible anymore. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew one thing for certain. I would no longer be the woman who silently took everything. I would no longer be the woman who gave and never asked for anything in return. I would make sure she saw me. I would make sure they all saw me. And for the first time in my life, I realized that I had the power to choose. I had given my youth, my energy, my love, and it was never a question. Not for me. That was what being a mother meant, wasn't it? Giving without asking for anything in return, loving without conditions, and most of all, sacrificing. It was a sacrifice I had never once regretted. Not until now. But now, as I stood in her kitchen, staring at the woman who I had raised, the woman I had fought for, I realized something. I had spent my entire life giving in ways that drained me, in ways that left me invisible. The hours, the sleepless nights, the days spent running errands, taking care of everything, all for her, for my daughter. I had given everything I had, but no one had ever asked me how I felt. No one had ever looked at me the way they looked at each other, as if I mattered. I had spent so much time putting everyone else's needs ahead of my own, that I had forgotten what it meant to matter, forgotten that I had a voice that needed to be heard, forgotten that I had feelings too. But now, standing there, hearing her words, I realized how foolish I had been. I had given everything for her, everything, and now, I was nothing more than a burden. I tried to think back to when it had all started, when my identity had become so wrapped up in them, in their needs, in their happiness. The years of raising her, of building a home, of sacrificing my own ambitions, so that she could have everything she ever wanted. It had all been worth it, right? I had worked 2 jobs for years to give her the life I never had. I had stayed up late at night, worrying about her, her future, her happiness. I had loved her so fiercely, so unconditionally, that I had let myself fade into the background. I had let her become the center of my world, the axis around which everything spun. And yet here I was, standing in the ruins of all that love, that sacrifice, that devotion. I had poured every ounce of myself into being a mother. I thought it would be enough, but it wasn't. Not for her. The weight of those realizations sank into me like stones in water, one after another, until I was drowning in them. She didn't even see me. She saw only the woman who had given, expecting nothing in return. And now, when I needed her most, I was nothing more than an extra mouth to feed. I had been so blind. I had thought that if I just gave enough, if I just loved enough, they would see me. But the truth was, they never had. I had become invisible in their eyes. I was just a fixture, a shadow in the background, a silent, unimportant part of their lives. They had never asked how I felt. They had never asked what I needed. I had been there to serve them, and now, when I was at my most vulnerable, they discarded. But the truth was, I wasn't just angry at her. I was angry at myself. I was angry at myself for letting this happen, angry at myself for losing myself in the roles I played, mother, wife, caregiver, and forgetting who I was. I had been blind to the fact that I deserved more than the scraps of attention they threw my way. I deserved more than to be treated as a burden, a servant in my own home. As I stood there, the anger that had been building inside me for years began to shift. It wasn't just about Emily anymore. It wasn't just about her demanding rent from me, or her dismissing me as an inconvenience. No, it was something deeper. It was the betrayal of myself, the betrayal of everything I had given up for them. I had given, but what had I received in return? Nothing but emptiness, nothing but silence. And I was done with it. Done with being invisible. Done with being the quiet woman in the background, never seen, never heard. Done with accepting their view of me, their pity. I didn't want to be the woman they dismissed, the woman who quietly accepted the scraps of attention they tossed her way. No, I wasn't going to be that woman anymore. I wasn't going to let them win. I wasn't going to let her win. I needed to take back control. I needed to show them that I wasn't a burden. I needed to make them see me, to make them understand that I had value, that I had worth. But how? How could I take back what I had so willingly given up for years? How could I reclaim the life I had lost, the voice I had silenced, for so long. I didn't know the answer yet, but I knew one thing for certain. I wouldn't sit in silence anymore. This time, I would make them see me. The words echoed in my mind, louder than anything else. For so long I had been invisible. I had poured everything I had into them, into my family, into Emily and Jacob, but they had never seen me. Not truly. They had never understood the sacrifices I had made, the pain I had carried, the love I had given without ever asking for anything in return. But now, I knew something. I mattered. I had been invisible, but not anymore. I felt the weight of those words settle in my chest, heavy and urgent. It wasn't just about Emily's cold dismissal, or her demand for rent. It wasn't just about the fact that I had been reduced to an inconvenience in their life. It was about everything I had hidden. The pain, the loneliness, the fear that I wasn't enough, that maybe, after everything I wasn't worth their love, but no more. I wasn't going to let that fear control me anymore. I had spent too many years living for them, for their happiness, for their needs, and now, I was finally going to live for me. But how? How would I make them see me? I could hear their voices, their laughter, their conversations, all muffled by the walls that separated us. But I had been part of this family for so long, always waiting for my moment to be heard, always waiting for them to realize I was there, standing in the shadows, ready to step into the light. But stepping into the light wasn't as easy as it seemed. It wasn't just about being seen, it was about claiming my place, my identity, my self-worth. I stood up from the chair, pacing slowly across the room. The silence felt louder now, sharper. The weight of it hung in the air, pressing against my skin. I could feel my pulse quicken, my breath becoming shallow as the anxiety tightened around my chest. I had been so scared for so long, scared of losing them, scared of being abandoned, scared of being alone. But now, the fear wasn't there anymore. Not in the same way. There was something else, something that burned in the pit of my stomach, something fierce and determined. Anger. I had given them everything, and now, they were treating me like I didn't matter, like I was just a burden. But I wasn't a burden. I was a woman who had sacrificed so much, who had given up so much of herself, and now it was time for me to take back what was mine. I thought about the years of self-doubt, the years of constantly questioning myself, wondering if I was doing enough, if I was worthy of their love. But all of that was in the past. I had spent far too long wondering if I was enough for them. Now, I needed to know if I was enough for me. I could feel the pulse of determination rising in me. I was going to fight, but not just for the inheritance, not just for some material gain. I was going to fight for respect, for my dignity. I was going to make them see me, even if I had to break everything apart to do it. But where would I start? How would I make this happen? The thought of confronting Emily again made my stomach churn. But I couldn't back down. I had spent so long being silent, so long watching from the sidelines, as they made their decisions without ever considering my voice. I was tired of it. I was tired of being a spectator in my own life. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It was late. But I knew I couldn't wait. I couldn't just sit here and let it all fester inside of me. I had to act. I had to make them see me. I stood there for a moment, letting the weight of my decision sink in. The silence around me felt heavier now. The air in the room was thick, suffocating all. But there was a part of me, a small part, that wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't afraid of what would happen if I stood up for myself. I wasn't afraid of the consequences. I was done letting their indifference dictate my work. I walked to the door, taking one final breath before I stepped into the night. The cold air hit my face, a stark contrast to the warmth of the house I had spent so many years in. But it felt fresh, new, as if it was calling me towards something else, something better. I wasn't going to back down. Not now, not ever again. I didn't know exactly what I was going to say or do, but I knew one thing for sure. This was my moment. This was my time, and I wasn't going to let them take it away from me. I could feel it, deep in my chest, the shift. The tension was building inside me, a pressure that grew with every passing day, every moment I spent in this house, in this place that had once felt like home. It no longer felt safe. It felt like a cage, a suffocating trap I had allowed myself to fall into. And now I was starting to realize something terrifying. I had been the one who had built the bars of that cage, brick by brick, year after year, until I was trapped in my own self-sacrifice. I thought about what Emily had said, the cruel words that still echoed in my mind like a drumbeat. "You're just an extra mouth to feed." I could hear her voice so clearly, so cold and detached. It was as if she had just announced that the sky was blue. A simple fact, with no emotion behind it. It was nothing to her, my existence. It was just an inconvenience. But what struck me the hardest wasn't her words themselves. It was the realization that I had let this happen. I had allowed her to feel that way about me. I had let my own life become a background noise in their world. I had erased myself, put myself in the corner and quietly waited for them to see me, to care, but they never did. Not truly. I could feel the anger rising again, burning hot in my chest. But this time, it wasn't directed at them. It wasn't about Emily or Jacob or anyone else. It was about me. It was about how I had treated myself. It was about the silence I had accepted for so long, the silence that had allowed them to use me, to make me feel worthless, as though I didn't matter. I thought about all the years I had spent giving. I thought about the meals I had cooked, the house I had kept, the sacrifices I had made to give my family everything I thought they needed. I thought about all the nights I stayed awake, worrying about them, wondering if they were happy, if they were safe. I had always put them first, but where had that gotten me? No one had asked me what I needed. No one had ever asked me what I wanted. And when I finally did speak up, when I finally said, "I can't take this anymore," I was told I was a burden. I wasn't a burden. I wasn't a burden. The more I thought about it, the more the anger swirled inside me, growing stronger, more focused. I had always been afraid of conflict, afraid of losing them, afraid of making waves. But now, I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't going to be silenced. I wasn't going to be the invisible woman in the background anymore. I wasn't going to hide my pain for their comfort. I wasn't going to stay quiet, just to keep the peace. No more. I had spent too long hiding, too long letting them dictate my worth. But I wasn't going to let them win. Not anymore. Not this time. I stood up from the kitchen table, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. The room seemed to grow colder, the silence between us thicker. I could feel the weight of it, pressing in on me. I thought of Emily again, her cold, indifferent gaze as she told me I was just another problem to be solved. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to let her treat me this way. I wasn't going to let anyone treat me this way. I wasn't going to let them decide who I was, what I was worth. I knew what I had to do. I had to take back control. But what did that look like? What did it mean for me to reclaim my life? For so long, I had lived for them. I had lived for everyone else's happiness. I had done everything for them, for their comfort, their peace of mind, their success. And in the process, I had lost myself. But now, I was starting to see that the life I had been living wasn't mine. It had been theirs, and that wasn't enough anymore. I looked around the kitchen, at the life I had built, and I felt something shift. It wasn't fear anymore. It was resolve. I wasn't going to ask for permission. I wasn't going to beg for love or respect. I wasn't going to be the silent woman in the background any longer. But what would I do? Where would I start? The weight of the unknown felt heavy on my shoulders. I didn't have the answers. Not yet. But I knew this. I wasn't going to stand idly by anymore. I wasn't going to sit back and let them control me. I would make them see me. I would make them hear me. And somehow I would find my way back to myself. I wasn't sure what that path would look like, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of it. The uncertainty still lingered, like a shadow, hanging just behind me. It wasn't gone completely. The fear, the anxiety of what lay ahead, crept into my thoughts every so often. But it was different now. The fear didn't control me. For once, I wasn't letting it hold me back. I had spent so many years paralyzed by what-ifs, so many years afraid to make the wrong choice, afraid of stepping out of line, afraid of losing what little I had. But now I knew that the real danger wasn't in making the wrong choice. The real danger was in not making a choice at all. I thought about the years I had spent waiting for their approval, waiting for them to see me, to value me. But the more I waited, the more I disappeared into the background of their lives, a mere shadow of the woman I once was. And I couldn't keep doing that. I couldn't keep being invisible. I stepped outside, the cold air rushing over me. It wasn't biting, not yet, but it was sharp, refreshing, like a new beginning. I took a deep breath, the kind of breath that fills your lungs with more than just air. It fills you with something else, something new. For the first time, I didn't feel stuck. I wasn't sure how it would all unfold, or if this path would lead me to where I wanted to go. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let fear keep me chained to the past anymore. I wasn't going to keep letting their judgment shape my life. I wasn't going to keep being the woman who bent and broke, who gave, and never got anything in return. No more. The road ahead was unclear, foggy. It felt like I was stepping into the unknown, like I was walking through a dense mist. But for the first time, the mist didn't feel suffocating. It felt like the space I needed, the space to grow. I felt my body relax. My shoulders, which had been so stiff for so long, started to ease. The tightness in my chest, that had come from years of holding back, of stifling my own voice, began to loosen. I was moving towards something new, moving towards something that I had never allowed myself to even consider before. I could feel it in my bones. This was the beginning of something different. I didn't know where it would take me, this new life, this new me. But the truth was, I had never been more ready. I had spent so much time being the woman everyone needed me to be, the mother, the wife, the caregiver. But now I was ready to be the woman I had always been underneath it all, the woman who deserved more than to be ignored, more than to be taken for granted. I let my eyes close for a moment, just standing there in the stillness of the night. I could hear the rustle of leaves in the wind, the faint sound of traffic in the distance. It was all so quiet, so peaceful. But inside I could feel something stirring, something stronger than fear, something stronger than regret. It was the feeling of finally owning my life. My heart beat a little faster as the weight of that realization settled in. For so long I had been afraid of changing things, of rocking the boat, of upsetting the delicate balance that had been holding everything together. But the truth was, that balance had never been real. It had been built on my silence, my acceptance, and I couldn't accept that anymore. I couldn't keep pretending that I was fine when I wasn't. I couldn't keep silencing myself for the sake of their comfort. And I knew deep down that the first step toward change was embracing the unknown. It was embracing the uncertainty of it all, and trusting that it would lead me somewhere better, somewhere where I wasn't invisible, somewhere where I mattered. But I wasn't naive. I knew this journey wouldn't be easy. There would be moments of doubt, moments where the past would try to pull me back. I would face opposition, and I would have to fight. But I was ready. I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of the unknown, not of the pain, not of the consequences. I was free, and for the first time in so long, I felt a quiet peace settle over me. It wasn't the kind of peace that comes from avoiding conflict, or pretending everything is okay. No. This was the peace that comes from accepting yourself, your flaws, your mistakes, your anger, and deciding that it wasn't enough to just exist anymore. It was time to live. I opened my eyes, stepping forward into the night. It felt like a new beginning, a beginning that started with me, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid to take the next step. I knew deep down that I was taking a huge risk. I wasn't just standing up to Emily anymore. I was standing up to everything I had allowed myself to be, the woman who had quietly accepted disrespect, the woman who had lived her life in the shadows of others. But I couldn't take it anymore. Not now, not ever again. I thought I was prepared for the confrontation. I thought I was ready to look Emily in the eyes, and tell her exactly what I had been holding inside for all these years. The hurt, the anger, the frustration, all of it ready to come pouring out. But when the moment came, when I saw her standing there, her face filled with annoyance and impatience as she looked at me, I realized that no amount of preparation could have ever prepared me for the reality of the situation. She didn't care, not in the way I needed her to, and that hurt more than anything else. I had expected her to understand, to apologize, to see the pain in my eyes, but instead she stood there, arms crossed, barely meeting my gaze. It was like she had already moved on from the conversation we'd had just days before. To her, it was just another issue, another problem to be solved. She couldn't even see the weight of the situation, let alone the depths of the betrayal that had cut through me. "How many times do I have to say this?" she snapped, her voice sharp. "You can't keep living here without doing your part. I'm not a charity, and neither are you." Her words stung, but they also fueled something inside me. I wasn't going to back down, not now. "I don't need your charity," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need you to understand that I am not a burden. I've done enough for you, for this family, and I am not going to stand here while you treat me like an inconvenience." Her eyes flickered with irritation, but she didn't back down. "If you want to stay here, you need to earn your keep. We can't just keep taking care of you forever. Life doesn't work that way." I could feel the rage bubbling inside me, the same rage I had been holding back for so many years. The years of sacrificing, the years of giving until I had nothing left to give. And now I was supposed to be grateful for their scraps, grateful that they allowed me to stay under their roof while they reminded me of my place. It wasn't about the house, it wasn't about the money, it was about respect, dignity. It was about me being seen, being heard. "I'm not asking you for anything," I said, my voice shaking with the force of my words, "but I am demanding that you respect me. I've given you everything. And this is how you repay me." The silence that followed felt thick, almost suffocating. I could see the walls closing in around me, the tension rising, thickening the air, until I could barely breathe. I had expected a fight, but this felt like something deeper, something darker, a truth I hadn't wanted to confront. And in that silence the truth became clear. She didn't care. The anger I had been holding inside of me, the anger that had been simmering for so long, exploded like a dam breaking. The words came out, almost without thinking. "I raised you, I gave everything for you, and this is what you've become. How could you treat me this way?" Her eyes softened for a moment, and I saw something flicker behind her gaze. Guilt, maybe. Or was it just indifference? I couldn't tell. She opened her mouth to say something, but then she closed it again, choosing instead to look away. She didn't apologize. She didn't take back what she had said. And in that moment, I realized something. She wasn't going to. She never had. The world I had tried to build around us, the family I had tried to keep intact, was slipping through my fingers. And it wasn't just Emily. It was Jacob had stayed silent through it all, watching as his wife stripped me of my dignity, as she made demands I could never have imagined. And that's when I realized I had been fighting alone for so long. I had believed that I was doing it all for them. I had given and given, expecting that one day they would see me for who I truly was, but they never had. And that was when I knew I couldn't keep fighting this battle for them anymore. I had to fight for myself. I was done being the woman who silently accepted this. I was done being the invisible one, the burden. I was done being their afterthought. But what would it look like? How would I fight back? The question lingered in my mind, a question I hadn't known I would have to answer. I had always been the silent one, the one who accepted what was given. I had spent so many years watching, waiting for someone else to see me, to acknowledge the effort I had put in, to realize the weight I carried, but it had never come. And now it was too late to wait any longer. I needed to fight. But how? Where did I even begin? I sat in the dim light of the living room, the house quiet, save for the distant hum of traffic outside. The silence felt deafening now, and it wasn't comforting. It wasn't the peace I had felt before. It felt like the calm before a storm. My thoughts swirled, heavy with doubt, anger and confusion. What could I do? What steps could I take? How could I even begin to claim my life back? I looked around the room, the space I had once called my own, the furniture, the photographs on the wall, the familiar things I had surrounded myself with. All of it suddenly felt so alien, like I had been living in someone else's life, like I had been a guest in my own existence. For so many years, I had been living for others, for Emily, for Jacob, for the family, for everyone else except for me. I had sacrificed so much of myself for their happiness, for their success, but where had it left me? Forgotten, unseen, disrespected. But now, as the anger began to swell within me, I realized that it was me who had allowed this to happen. I had allowed myself to be silenced. I had allowed myself to disappear into the background of their lives. I had let their needs become more important than my own, and that had to stop. I wasn't sure what my next step would be, but I knew one thing for certain: I was no longer going to be invisible. I wasn't sure how to get back at Emily, or what revenge even looked like in this situation. My initial instinct had been to strike back, to hurt her the way she had hurt me, to make her feel the pain I had been carrying. But as I sat there in the silence, I realized that revenge wouldn't heal me. It wouldn't give me the peace I was looking for. It wouldn't make me whole again. It was a decision. This fight wasn't about taking something from her. It wasn't about hurting her. It was about me taking back what was mine. My dignity, my self-respect, my voice. I thought about all the years of love I had given, the years of sacrifice. I had given everything I had, but I had never asked for anything in return. I had put them first, always. But I had forgotten about me. I had forgotten that I deserved respect. I had forgotten that I mattered. How did I take that back? How did I fight for my worth, after years of giving it away? I stood up, walking toward the window, staring out at the darkened street. The world outside felt so distant, so removed from me. I felt like a stranger in my own life, unsure of what was ahead, unsure of what the next chapter would look like. But I wasn't afraid anymore. For the first time, the uncertainty didn't paralyze me, it propelled me. I didn't need to know exactly what would happen next. I just needed to keep moving forward, to stop waiting for something to change, to stop waiting for their approval. I needed to take control. And that's when I realized I didn't need to fight the way I thought I would. I didn't need to hurt anyone. I didn't need to tear them down to feel better about myself. I didn't need revenge to prove my worth. I had already proven it by surviving, by living through all of it. But I couldn't do it alone. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine, that I could bear this weight on my own. I had to reach out. I had to find my voice, and I had to speak up. The path ahead was still unclear, but that was okay. I didn't need all the answers right now. I just needed to keep moving, one step at a time, one moment at a time. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what was to come. I was ready for it, ready to reclaim my life. And as I stepped back from the window, I felt something inside me shift. It wasn't fear, it was strength. It was the quiet determination to never again be the woman who let others define her. I wasn't sure how it would happen or when, but I knew I would make them see me. I would make them see me for the woman I truly was, for the woman I had always been underneath it all. And that was where my fight would begin. The moment I walked out of Emily's house, I thought I knew what was coming. I thought that the weight of my confrontation, my demand for respect, would be the hardest thing I'd face. But nothing could have prepared me for what I discovered. Just a few hours later, I was still reeling from the fight, my body tense, my mind racing. I couldn't understand why she had been so cold, why she had rejected me so easily, as if the years of sacrifice I had made meant nothing. But in the quiet aftermath, as I sat alone in my car, a sudden realization hit me. Something wasn't right. The words Emily had spoken to me lingered in the air, but there was something deeper, something darker at play. I had always trusted my instincts, but that night, I had the sense that I had missed something. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this, more to what was happening, more to the way they were treating me, more to my daughter-in-law's coldness than I had allowed myself to believe. I couldn't ignore it, not any. Without even thinking about it, I drove back to Emily's house. I hadn't planned on confronting her again, not so soon, but I couldn't let it go, not this time. When I arrived, I found the door slightly ajar. It wasn't unusual for the door to be open, especially when she was in the middle of cleaning or running around the house. But as I stepped inside, I felt a chill run down my spine. The house was unusually quiet, the kind of quiet that unsettles you, like something is about to happen but you don't know what. I called out, but there was no answer. Slowly, I made my way through the house, my heart pounding in my chest. The tension was so thick, I could feel it pressing against my ribs, making it hard to breathe. I went into the living room, expecting to find Emily, but instead I found something else. I stopped dead in my tracks, my eyes falling on a set of papers scattered across the coffee table. It was a stack of documents, some with the family's name on them, but what caught my attention wasn't the paper itself, it was what was written on it. It was a will, not just any will, but Emily's will. The shock of seeing it in front of me froze me. I hadn't expected this. Not like this. The words on the paper blurred for a moment as my pulse quickened, but when I could finally make sense of them, my stomach dropped. The will was clear, and it made everything I had just fought for seem pointless. I wasn't in the will, not at all. My name wasn't there, not a single mention of me. It was as if I had never existed in their lives. There were other names. Jacob's, Emily's, their children, but not mine. I had spent all these years building a life with them, and in a single stroke, I was erased. My hands trembled as I picked up the document. I couldn't believe I wasn't just a burden. I wasn't even worth remembering. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to steady my shaking hands. I hadn't expected a will. Certainly not like this. It was as if everything I had done, everything I had sacrificed, had meant absolutely nothing to them. I was invisible, but the twist wasn't in the will itself. No, the twist was in what I realized afterward. Emily had always known. She had always planned on excluding me, but in my fight, I had forced her hand. I had done something she didn't expect. I had forced her to make a choice, and in that choice, she had revealed herself, and in the end, it didn't matter. I had already made my decision. The rage that had boiled inside me seemed to cool in an instant. The anger, the frustration, the bitterness, they all dissolved, replaced by something else. It wasn't relief. Not exactly, but it was clarity. I saw it now. I saw it all so clearly. Emily wasn't the one who had wronged me. It was myself. I had wronged myself by staying in the shadows for so long, by letting them treat me like this. As the cold realization sank in, I felt something else, something unexpected, peace. For so long I had thought I needed to get even. I had thought that revenge would heal me, would make things right. But standing there, looking at the will, I realized something important. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their validation. What I needed was to stand up for myself. And I had done that. I had made my voice heard. I wasn't going to be erased anymore. And that was when it hit me. I didn't need their inheritance. I didn't need to fight for what was already mine. My freedom, my self-respect, those were the things I had earned. So I left the house. I didn't confront her. I didn't need to. I had already confronted myself. I had already made my decision, and for the first time, I felt free. The air felt different as I stepped outside, the night cool against my skin. There was no anger in me, no resentment, just this overwhelming sense of peace. I didn't have to fight anymore. I didn't have to prove myself to anyone. Not Emily, not Jacob, not even to myself. I had made the hardest decision of my life, and it wasn't to tear them down or make them feel what I had felt. It wasn't about revenge. It was about freedom. I kept walking, one foot in front of the other, with no real destination in mind. The streets were quiet. The only sound, the distant hum of passing cars, the soft rustle of leaves in the trees. It was late, and the world seemed to be asleep, just like I had been for so long. It felt like I was waking up from a long, exhausting dream, a dream where I had been afraid to look at myself, afraid to confront the truth of what I had become. But now, I was awake, and for the first time, I felt like I could breathe, really breathe. I could feel the weight lifting off my chest, the pressure that had been there for so long, the weight of their expectations, the weight of my self-doubt. It had been a burden I hadn't even known I was carrying, until now. I had spent so much of my life wondering if I was enough, if I was doing enough, if they would ever see me for who I truly was. And now I knew, it didn't matter. Not anymore. I had spent years trying to please everyone, trying to make sure everyone else was happy, trying to make them see me, but all I had ever gotten in return was silence, disrespect, indifference, and now, I wasn't afraid of that silence anymore. I wasn't afraid of being ignored, because the truth was, I had already been living for them, and I had been losing myself in the process. The feeling of stepping away from that, of letting go, was like stepping into a vast open space. It was unfamiliar, yes, and a little scary, but it was also beautiful. I wasn't sure where it would take me. I didn't know what the next step would look like, but I wasn't afraid of it anymore. I stopped walking for a moment, standing under the glow of a streetlight. The light was soft, almost gentle, casting a warm glow on the pavement, and it felt like I was standing at the edge of something new, something fresh. I had given up so much of myself, so much of who I was, and now, for the first time, I was standing in the light of my own truth, and I didn't need to apologize for it. No more being the woman who accepted scraps, no more being the woman who stayed silent and waited for the love and respect that was never going to come. I had spent too much of my life doing that. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling as I unlocked it. I didn't know why I was doing this. Maybe I was just trying to feel connected, trying to feel something, anything. After everything that had happened, I scrolled through my contacts, paused for a moment, and then deleted Emily's name. It wasn't an act of revenge. It wasn't about punishing her. It was about freeing myself. I felt a strange calmness wash over me as I pressed the delete button. I wasn't letting go of her entirely. She would always be my daughter-in-law, but I wasn't going to let her define me. I wasn't going to let anyone define me anymore. I turned off the phone, slipping it back into my pocket, and took a deep breath. There was a finality to that simple act, like I had closed a door that had been open for too long, letting in nothing but hurt and disappointment. But now, I was the one closing it. I kept walking, my footsteps more confident now, more sure of myself. The world around me seemed to be shifting. The cold air didn't feel suffocating anymore. The quiet didn't feel oppressive. It felt like freedom, like a future I had been denying myself, a future I had been too afraid to face. And for the first time, I didn't need anyone's permission to step into it. Not Emily's, not anyone's. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't know where this road would take me, but that was the beauty of it, wasn't it? The uncertainty of it all, the fact that for the first time in so long, I was choosing to live for myself, choosing to find my voice, choosing to fight for the woman I had become, and the woman I had yet to become. The past was behind me, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid of what the future might bring. It wasn't the kind of peace I had expected. It wasn't the sweet revenge I thought I needed to feel whole again. No. This was something quieter, something deeper. It wasn't about making them pay. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about, the truth was, I hadn't needed their approval, not the way I thought I did. I didn't need their validation, their love or their forgiveness. I needed to forgive myself. The weight that had been pressing down on me for so long, the weight of rejection, the weight of giving everything and receiving nothing in return, it all started to lift. It was as if I had been carrying a heavy burden, one I didn't even know how to put down. Until now, I didn't have to fight them anymore. I didn't have to win. I didn't need the inheritance. What I needed was freedom, the freedom to live for myself, the freedom to embrace my own worth, to stop being the woman who quietly accepted what they handed her, to stop being the woman who loved unconditionally and received nothing in return. I had spent so many years living for them, for my family, for Emily, for everyone but me. I had spent so many years sacrificing, giving, loving, hoping that if I gave enough, they would see me, but they hadn't, and the truth was, they probably never would, but that didn't matter anymore. I saw myself. I sat in the living room, the evening light gently streaming through the window. The house was quiet, still. The silence felt different now, not oppressive, not suffocating but peaceful. I felt the tension that had been holding my body tight for so long ease away. I could finally breathe. I thought about the years I had spent giving everything, about the emptiness I had felt when they didn't even acknowledge my sacrifices. I thought about the moments when I had believed that if I just kept giving, kept doing enough, it would all work out. But now I knew better. Now I knew that the only thing I had needed to give was myself. I didn't need anyone's approval, not Emily's, not Jacob's, no one's. I had spent so long looking for their validation that I had forgotten what it felt like to value myself. But now I knew my worth. I picked up my phone, scrolling through my contacts. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, maybe an apology, maybe a recognition of what I had done for them, but then I stopped. I didn't need that anymore. I didn't need them to see me. I saw myself, and that was enough. For the first time in a long time, I felt whole. The anger, the bitterness, the resentment, they all faded away. The relief I had been waiting for, the sense of closure, it was finally here. I didn't have to keep fighting, keep proving myself. I didn't have to chase after their approval anymore. I looked out the window again, the darkness outside now enveloping the world, but it wasn't the cold, oppressive darkness that had once consumed me. No, this was the quiet, peaceful darkness of knowing that I was free from their judgment, free from the weight of their expectations. I stood up, walking to the door, and opened it. The cool night air rushed in, filling my lungs. I closed my eyes, letting the breeze wash over me, and for the first time, I felt alive. I felt like I was stepping into something new, something better. I didn't need them to make me feel worthy. I was worthy, and that was enough. I walked into the night, feeling the freedom in every step I took. The journey had been long, and the scars ran deep, but I had made it. I had found myself, and for the first time, I was no longer afraid. The past was behind me, and I was walking forward, into a future where I would no longer hide. I would live for me, and that was all I needed. The finality of those words hung in the air, like a declaration. It wasn't just something I was saying to myself, it was something I had already decided, deep down, in the quiet parts of my heart where I had hidden my true self. For so long, I had always been the one to give, always the one to sacrifice. I had lived for Emily, for Jacob, for my family. I had been everything they needed, and somewhere along the way, I lost myself. But now, standing here, in the stillness of the night, I knew one thing: I wasn't going to do that anymore. I wasn't going to be the woman who fades into the background, who fades into the shadows, just to keep the peace. I wasn't going to be the woman who accepted everything, never asking for anything in return. I was going to live for me. The breeze that had felt cold, just moments ago now, felt like a gentle reminder of something I had forgotten. The world outside had been waiting for me. The world had been waiting for me, to choose myself. I took a step forward, my heart steadying with each breath I took. The tension that had once coiled in my chest, tight and unforgiving, began to loosen. The tightness in my throat, the constant weight on my shoulders, they had been with me for so long, that I hadn't even realized I was carrying them anymore. But now, I felt like the weight had shifted, and I was ready to walk into the future I had always deserved. The path ahead was still uncertain, but I wasn't afraid. No, I wasn't afraid to walk forward, no matter how unsure I was about the next step, no matter how dark the road ahead seemed. I had spent my life waiting for someone to give me permission to live, waiting for someone to tell me it was okay to take up space, to demand respect, to be seen. But now, for the first time, I realized that I didn't need anyone's permission. I was enough. I had always been enough. The pain of the past, the rejection, the betrayal, the years of being dismissed, it was there. It would always be a part of me. But now, it didn't define me. I defined me. The past no longer had a hold on me. It didn't control me anymore. I had let go of it. I had released myself from the weight of everyone else's expectations, and for the first time, I was free. I thought of Emily. Her face, her coldness, it stung. Yes, but it didn't have the power to hurt me anymore. I could see it now. I could see the way she had treated me, not as a reflection of my worth, but as a reflection of her. Her inability to see me, to respect me, was not my fault. It was her loss. But that was the last time I was going to let someone erase me. I didn't need her to see me anymore. I didn't need anyone to see me. I already saw myself. The world felt different now. The quietness, once so deafening, now felt peaceful. The stillness wasn't painful anymore, it was filled with possibility. I thought back to the moment I had walked out of Emily's house, the moment I had made the choice to leave, to stop fighting for their approval. I thought of the hours spent questioning whether I was making the right decision, wondering if the guilt would eat me alive. But now, I knew it had been the right decision, the only decision. I wasn't a burden, I wasn't just an extra mouth to feed. I was a woman who had been through so much, and yet, here I was, standing tall. I stopped walking, standing in the middle of the street for a moment, looking up at the sky. The stars were barely visible through the clouds, but the moon was bright, a soft light cutting through the night. For the first time, I felt like I belonged to myself. The past was behind me, and now, I was ready to step forward. My hands trembled slightly, but not from fear, from something else, something deeper. It was the realization that I was free from the chains of regret, free from the chains of their expectations, free from the years of self-doubt. I had been living in a prison of my own making, but now, I was walking out of it, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty, I didn't feel ashamed, I felt alive. The end. The only person who needed to see me was me. I didn't need their approval, I needed to choose myself, to stand up for my worth, even when they never did. I walked away, not because I had lost them, but because I had found myself, and that, I realized, was all I needed. Here at RL's Circle, your story matters too. We all have our moments of pain, of betrayal, of self-doubt, but the real question is, when will you finally choose yourself? Don't forget to subscribe, share your thoughts in the comments, and join us for more stories that show we are not alone in this journey.